I appreciate you joining me today. We're going to be looking at the account when Israel battles against the Amalekites in the book of Exodus. Our hymn today is the hymn, Mighty is the Lord. Let's look at our passage now. In Exodus chapter 17 at verse 8. Make it a little larger. Now Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And we know what they did was they ambushed them and attacked them from the rear. We know that from other passages that they came against their women and children and those who were weaker. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose us some men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So it was when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands became heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it, and Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword, and the Lord said to Moses, "Write this for a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called its name, "The Lord is my banner." For he said, "Because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." All right, so what points might we make? Well, one's a pretty obvious one, and that even Moses needed help. Do you remember what is said about Moses when he passes, which is quite a long time after this, some 40 years after this, and I believe it talks about how his natural vigor had not diminished, if I remember correctly. That's towards the end of Deuteronomy. But anyway, yeah, that's Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 7. He was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not diminished, nor his natural vigor diminished. This is 40 years before that. And yet, even Moses needed help. And there are going to be times where we need help. Like we just need help. And so Aaron and Hur get on one side and the other. They bring a stone and they allow him to sit down on the stone. You know, there's nothing shameful about sitting down. If the time calls for it. I've known congregations and heard of things where they did not want the preacher to sit down when he preached if he was having some sort of ailment, or he'd had surgery, and it's as though there was some sort of shame. There's some sort of shame in sitting down while you teach or preach. And if you got to sit down, sit down. Better to sit down than to fail in your role to serve the Lord. Moses needed help. So he sits down, and Aaron holds up one side of his one arm, and Hur holds up the other side. You might think about why. Why is this the case? So when Moses' hands are held up, Israel prevailed, and when he lets them down, Amalek prevailed. Like, what's the point? And the point is obvious, but at the same time, it has to be made. This is about God's might. It is not about their might. Now, do they have their roles to fulfill? Yes, Joshua, choose some men and go out and fight with Amalek. But I'm going to assume that when Moses' hands were drooping and when Amalek prevailed, you might think about what was happening down on the battlefield. One good. And so when you back up and you start actually thinking about it, and it's like, this is kind of odd. This is bizarre. That God would allow Amalek to prevail at a certain point. And so you might think about each of these things. Ultimately, to look back in our passage, I don't think it's surprising, as this is about God's might. It's not surprising that Amalek would prevail when Moses' arms drooped down, because when you get down to it, we're not that far out of Egypt. We're not that far at all. These men, these individuals have never seen war. These aren't soldiers, not in that sense. I understand it talks about the hosts of the Lord, the army of the Lord, but these, I don't think they've ever seen battle before. They haven't been battle tested. They haven't been trained up. He says, Joshua, just choose some men. And so they go out and they fight. And by the Lord's power, they're victorious. Appreciate you. Hope you have a good day. Join us tomorrow for another portion of our Daily Praise.